Hey guys, welcome to part 8 of my Bullet 500 restoration. So, you can see I've made some progress. I'm actually cheating and recording this after I did the work. I'm going to call this video 8.5 as opposed to just part 8 because there's going to be 2 parts to it. First of all, it started getting really long at over 20 minutes, and I also hit a few snags with the primary cover. The main problems were the screws. Most of what I ordered to replace old screws that I meant to just throw out didn't fit. The threads were just completely wrong. Even though it's the right part and the right part number, I don't know, maybe these fit another year or something, but they clearly don't fit mine. Anyway, I figured it all out, but it did delay things, again, for a couple of days. So the second part 8 will be the rest of the primary case where I put in the alternator, clutch, and primary chain. And you're going to love what the previous owner did with that primary cover. I'll make it work, but talk about amateur hour.
But they're amateurs.
In this one, I reassembled the timing cover and put all the timing gears back in. I also put on the new front sprocket and chain. The rear sprocket is actually part of the rear drum. It's just all one big integrated piece. I'll likely change that out in the relatively near future, but I can tell it's not the original one and the teeth are in excellent shape. So for now, I'm just going to leave it. The rear drum brakes are also new. I replaced those last year. Anyway, let's go back upstairs, finish the timing cover, and get started. Okay, so let's put the oil pumps back in the timing cover. It's actually really simple. It's just you've got 2 pumps and a spindle. Then you have 2 half bearings on springs, and then the 2 covers. And that's all there is to it. The main thing is just make sure you have oil on everything. Don't put anything in here dry. So I've already oiled the spindle and the pumps, and I put oil inside as well. Everything's got oil on it. So just the most important thing is do not put these in dry. So the 2 oil pumps look the same, but they're actually a little different. The main thing is that the plungers inside are a different size. So you can see that one's a little bit smaller than that one. That one's got a wider diameter. And it's very important to put these in the right place. So the wider one, also known as the returning pump or the scavenger pump, has a couple different names. I don't know. That one goes on the oil filter side. So this side where the oil filter goes. That's the big one. And then the small one, or the feeder pump, that goes on the back, where it's the back of the oil filter. So that's how you remember which one goes where. We're going to start with the spindle. And again, it's important this goes in the right direction as well. So it's easy to remember. You can see you've got a short end and a longer end. The longer end goes in first from the oil filter side. So just grab the short end and then put the longer end right inside there. And then you can see that the groove of the spindle lines up perfectly. So we're going to start with the oil pump with the bigger plunger. And again, that goes on the oil filter side. And it goes face down. The flat side goes down. The groove side goes up. So we're going to put the flat side down, and it just hooks on to the little pin of the spindle. So I hope I'm not blocking it. So just kind of get the end of the pin on there. Just like that. Sorry, it got like a little jammed. I put it down for a second, then it popped right in. So it just goes flush just like that. And if you turn the spindle, you'll see how it operates. It's literally a simple mechanical pump. And there's the other side. And these are a little bit finicky because the plungers are new, so it was a little hard to get the plunger over the spindle. But once it's on, then it's loose and it's nice. But getting it on there was a little finicky. Spring goes down, bearing goes up. So just tighten everything down. Tight, not too tight. You never want to over tighten with these Royal Enfields, but everything's on nice and snug. Both covers go on exactly the same way. Don't forget to put the gasket on. And now let's get this cover back downstairs, put in the timing gears, and then get the cover back on. And I'm not putting the oil filter in yet, so I'm still waiting to kind of put this assembly back in, but that'll happen soon. I'm just going to do it while it's on the bike. All right, let's fill this back in and then put the timing cover back on. And we're going to start with the timing gear right here and then put the worm gear on afterwards. So the timing gear's got a little groove on it that's going to go right over that little key right there at the top. So that's what's going to hold it on initially. And then the worm gear, when I screw that on, will push it all the way into place. But before I can do that, I've got to get the other gears on because they're going to help hold everything so I can screw that worm gear on fully. Because if you saw last time, I sort of held the crankshaft with a screwdriver to keep it from moving. But that was the old one. I'm not doing it to this new one. This new one I'm treating like glass. So you'll see it's going to be a little bit of a process to get it all done, but it's not a big deal. Okay, here's the timing gear, and you can see the groove at the top that's going to go over that little key. And then you can see two dots there off to the right, I guess like at 1 o'clock. And that's going to be key to lining all of this up because that's going to match with dots on the cam gears, and that's how you set the initial timing. So the crankshaft is at top dead center, and when you know it's at top dead center when that key is at the very top. And you want it at top dead center to get all these dots lined up on the first 3 gears. So here's the first cam gear, and there are 2 dots right there in the front, and those 2 dots just need to line up with the 2 dots on the timing gear. Just like that. This is the second cam gear, and it has 1 dot on the front, and that 1 dot is now going to line up with this 1 dot right here. And by doing this, all 3 of these are now going to be in sync and timed properly. You've got the 2 dots on the timing gear that line up perfectly with the 2 dots on the first cam gear, and then the 2 single dots on the cam gears line up perfectly as well. So everything is now properly timed. I just have to get the 2 idler pinions and the distributor gear in, get the worm gear on, and then push this timing gear in, and then we can close this thing up. Okay, you're going to need some thrust washers for these gears. And again, thrust washers are paper thin. You can see these are paper thin. They don't act as shims. They simply act as a secondary wearing surface. And really quick, going back to the crankshaft, the reason I did not need the thrust washers on that is because the hardened polished steel sides of the crankshaft I'm using kind of act as their own wearing surface. It would be redundant. And again, they're not shims or anything. They're just a secondary wearing surface. But on these, it is necessary. And they go on just this side of the timing gears, but they go on both sides of the idler pinions. So I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, I've got a light coat of oil on them, and they just slip right over on the top. Again, never, anything that's metal on metal, always have a light coat of oil on it. And then again, this is just going to act as a secondary wearing surface for when I put the case on top. And then these go behind the idler pinions, and then there will be another set that go in front. Okay, the two distributor gears, they go in groove side down. So like this. And there are no dots or anything. These are just kind of bring the energy from here up to the distributor, so they can go on any way. Before I can put the final distributor gear in, I actually have to put the distributor back in because it connects to that. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the worm gear on and then push the timing gear all the way in. And to do that, I'm going to have to do what I said I wasn't going to do. And I'm going to have to put a screwdriver between these two gears. That will hold everything in place for me to push that gear on by turning the worm gear. I'm just going to start it by hand, but don't forget that this is a reverse thread, so you actually turn it to the left to tighten it.
It's on backwards.
So the distributor just screws right back on. And now the top distributor gear goes on. And this part goes inward. So it's like that. And then the final screw will push this one home. So the one gasket I did not have is the one for the distributor, but I just used sealant on both sides and it should be fine. So I'm just going to put a very small amount of gasket seal just on a couple points here to hold the gasket in place. I'm not going to put it all over because there are separate holes in here to distribute oil, and I don't want to take any chance of plugging any of those. Like right here and there. This stuff is a mess. But but I got to keep this gasket in place. So just in a couple places here, I'm just gonna put a little bit, just a little dab, That's it, just to hold the gasket in place. Okay, so my sealant strategy didn't work. It didn't hold this on at all. So I got a new plan here. So I've got it on the cover, and I've got some screws, 3 of them, just sort of in place to keep it in place. And I'll just kind of get it on there and start threading just these 3 screws, and that'll hold everything in place until I get it on. All right, so plan B worked just fine, and I got 3 screws in there, so now the gasket is clearly being held in place. So we got that problem solved. I'm not tightening anything down yet. I'm just getting everything on kind of loose. And I want to stagger it a little bit as well. So remember when I made my little cardboard rig just to keep all the bolts in order? Well, it is paying off now. All right, everything's screwed down. Tight, but not too tight. You know, just nice and snug. You don't want to go too much with these. And just checking the crankshaft. Everything moves freely, so nothing is binding, nothing is jammed. Everything's nice and loose and smooth. So the timing side is complete and a complete success. So the last thing I'm going to do is just plug the distributor back in. And it only goes in one way, so you're not going to be able to do it wrong. And it just snaps into place. All right, now let's put on the new front sprocket and chain. So here's my new English front sprocket. And there's that washer that's going to close over this nut so it won't be able to turn off. So there's no front or back to this, but I just like to put it so the writing's facing out. I don't know why, but it's just how I do it. And just make sure it sort of slots into these grooves. The nut doesn't have to be real tight. I actually just made it basically finger tight. You know, it's on there. It's on there because the washer's now going to bend over this, so it's going to hold it in place. So it's interesting how ridiculous this is. So one end of the washer is perfect to go right over the flat part of the screw there. Then the other one is kind of at a corner of the screw. So it's just going to be sort of a kind of flatten it down the best you can. But no matter which way you do it, you're going to end up with one on the flat side and then one on a corner. It'd be nice if they designed it so they were both on flat sides, but this should hold fine. I'm not worried about it. Okay, the first end is bent down. So now I'll just do the second end. It's going to go over that corner, but it'll be better than nothing. I mean, this alone will hold it on, but I'll bend this end now also. I mean, it's not super pretty, but it gets the job done. And between this and the other one, this nut's not going anywhere. All right, here's my new chain. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in the rear and just kind of string it up to the front and then bring it around, and then I'll clip it together right here on the rear hub. Okay, so the chain is on here, but unfortunately I was not able to link it together because it's a few millimeters too tight. And the reason for that is because the old chain had stretched, so the wheel was moved back to accommodate that. So now I can't get the new one on. So I've got to just loosen the wheel and then push it forward a little bit, and then I'll be able to get this linked up. So there's just a little ratcheting mechanism right here, and you just turn it one way or the other and it moves the wheel backwards or forwards. And there's one on both sides. And what I like about it is there's no real guesswork. You just move them both to the same place, and then you know you're even. And there's just a little cotter pin there I have to remove, and then a lock nut, and then the main nut. And then we'll push this wheel forward a little bit and get this chain linked up. And now I've got plenty of room to link the chain together. Just like when I took it off, you just take the back link, put it on both sides. Then take the front plate. And then your little retaining clip. And the way this works, you always want it to go towards the way the chain is moving. So, and then the back faces the other way. So it's always going into the wind, so to speak. Okay, so the chain's adjusted, and I put this on the 9th notch on both sides. And I marked it also, just so I'll know in the future. So when I adjust the chain, if I have to move the wheel back, I'll just know exactly where it was, and it'll just be easier to adjust both sides that way. If I have to go 1 or 2 notches, I'll have that reference. But so everything's tightened down. It was very easy, and brand new chain. So this wraps up the first part of part 8. And the second part of part 8, I'll finish the primary case, put in the clutch, alternator, and primary chain, because in part 9, we'll do the top end, carburetor, and exhaust. And we'll really be on our way at that point. So thanks again for watching. And if you're new, definitely subscribe and stick around. A lot of cool stuff is coming up. So until next time, guys.